Hey everybody, my name's Casey. Welcome to the first episode of my horror movie podcast. I'm going to jump in and talk about 4 movies this week. It's actually 4 movies that I saw this week. I'm thinking that's probably going to be the kind of go-to for the way I'm going to handle the show. I'm just going to pick whatever movies I watched that week. I've been watching horror movies since I was like 8, 9 years old. So there's a lot of stuff that I've seen, but there's a lot of stuff I haven't seen too. So it's going to be a mix of stuff that I've seen before and stuff that I haven't. And I'm just going to go through and talk about the movies, talk about if there was anything special going on with them as far as like the situation I saw them in. I'll talk about where I've seen them at, and yeah, let's get into it. So the 4 movies that we're going to talk about this week, technically it's going to be 5, and I'll explain that in a minute. But the 4 main movies that we're going to talk about are Reanimator, The Slaughterhouse Killer, Pontypool, and Bring Her Back. And the 5th movie is going to be an indie film that I saw. I actually picked it up on Blu-ray at a horror movie convention I was at. The way that I like to review movies a lot of times is a scale of like 1 to 10. That's always kind of been my go-to for the way that I like talking about things. But I don't feel like that's fair for indie films a lot of times. And hopefully as the show goes on and maybe I get more episodes under the belt, you'll kind of see why I do it that way. But if you hold a indie horror movie that was made on $1,000 and none of the cast got paid and it's all these people making movies with their friends and that kind of thing, I don't want to hold them to the same type of like 1 to 10 scale as I would a movie like The Exorcist or like this week Bring Her Back, that kind of thing. It's not really an apples to apples comparison, and I don't think it's good for me to jump in and say, oh, well, this movie was, the acting was terrible. You could tell there was no money on the screen. The special effects were garbage, all of that kind of stuff, because it's an indie movie. We know that. We know that the whole look of the movie isn't going to be as high quality as something that had 10, 15, $20 million or more than that thrown at it. And it's not fair to, in my opinion, it's not fair to expect them to look as good. Now, I'm sure every now and again we'll come across something that happens to look as good or better than something that's recently been made for, millions and millions of dollars. But, yeah, I don't want to hold them to the same standard, because I feel like indie horror is something that we should support, so that way we get more interesting ideas. Because, and I've heard other people talk about it, movies like Terrifier, the Terrifier series has come out, and other movies along those same lines. Those probably wouldn't exist if we didn't have indie horror movies. So, yeah, we're not going to do a 1 to 10 scale on the indie horror. It's just going to be hey, this is what I watched. You may want to watch it too. Here's some pros and cons of it, but I'm not going to just beat them up over every little nitpick like I will something that, was made by a major studio and cost millions and millions of dollars. So let's go into our first movie. We're going to be talking about Reanimator. I actually saw this one at a movie theater. It's the 40th anniversary this past couple of weeks. The whole shtick for the show is kind of like stuff I've seen in the past week. I'm going to be 100% honest. I don't know for sure that I saw Reanimator within the past week, but it was in like the last 10 days. So I'm not a liar, but I did see it within the last like week-ish. From here on out, it'll be a little bit more consistent. But anyways, Reanimator, saw it in the movie theater for the 40th anniversary. Absolutely loved seeing it on the big screen. I've had the Arrow Video Blu-ray before, and it's a decent transfer, and the audio on it was good and all that kind of stuff. But when I saw Reanimator in the movie theater, in the new 4K restoration they did of it, Ignite Films, I think is who put out the Blu-ray. They may have done the restoration as well. But I saw it, and I was just glued to the screen the whole time. Unfortunately, it was only me and I think 3 other people, like one other group of 3 people that were in there. And I go to horror movies a lot of times by myself, unless it's something that, my kids can sit in on. But regardless, I saw it at the movie theater with a few other people that just so happened to be in the movie with me. And the way the colors popped on the screen, the amount of detail that you can see in the restoration, and just everything about the movie on the big screen was fantastic. First time I've ever seen it on the big screen. I'm 36 years old. So technically I wasn't born. I think it came out in 1985. I actually wasn't born yet when it first came out. I was born in 88. But I've seen it on Blu-ray before, and I think I've seen it on DVD and maybe cable, that kind of thing when I was younger. But seeing it all laid out in its best possible form on the big screen was like seeing magic. We were laughing. The people behind me were laughing. It's like a big, recliner type theater, so we weren't like sitting close to each other. But the beats of the movie where you're laughing, like with the dead cat attacking Jeffrey Combs, that kind of thing. Like everybody was laughing. Everybody was having a good time. I don't know that I can think of anything negative about it. In fact, I'll be straight up with you. Like when I left the movie theater, I came home and I checked my bank account to make sure I had the money to afford it, because it's not cheap. But I came home and I immediately bought the 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray put out by Ignite Films on it, because it was such a phenomenal transfer, and the amount of detail that was up on the screen, and like I said, the sound, all that kind of stuff. And plus, to be honest, like in the movie theater, I could tell that what I was watching was going to be like a memory moment for me. And so I wanted to be able to like relive that nostalgia. So I came home and I checked out the Ignite Films website, and looked at the 4K restoration that they had on disc. There were a few different versions of it that you could get. So I think the lowest one was like maybe $30 or $40. It was just the standard 4K Ultra HD. Then they had a $80 4K Ultra HD with like some lobby cards and a J card and like a big box set, kind of like how some of the Arrow Video stuff is. And then they had a $120 version of it that was all of that. Plus there was a bobblehead of the doctor's corpse when he put the anatomy training dummy thing on his head. There's a bobblehead version of that, but that was $120. So I thought about getting it, but I wound up going with the $80 version and got it in the mail a few days ago. And it's just fantastic. It's nice, heavy, all that kind of stuff that I like in physical media. I can't wait to watch it with my wife, and when my kids get a little bit older, I'll let them check it out, because there's a lot of, nudity and that kind of thing in it, and my kids are a little bit young to get into some of the seedier stuff right now, but they watch a good bit, and they won't be too far out before they can handle something like that. So Reanimator, as far as the film goes, most people have seen it. It's based on the H.P. Lovecraft story. Based on the H.P. Lovecraft story, it's got special effects that were fantastic for the time. Nowadays, it's practical special effects. So nowadays, like when you look at it, and my reviews are going to have spoilers in them, so it is what it is. Just, if you're not into spoilers, I completely understand. You can skip my portions of the review that have spoilers for movies you haven't seen before, but most of us at this point have probably seen Reanimator. So a lot of the doctor, or the lead surgeon or brain surgeon being beheaded and all that kind of stuff, and the special effects of the movie for the time were really, really great. And to me, they still hold up a lot now. There's a few things that are kind of hokey, and you can look at and you can tell how they did some of the stuff of him carrying his own head around and the head in the tray. Like, we all know that man was under the table with his head sticking up through the tray. But that's fine. Like, it's an 80s movie. It's 1985, for God's sake. So the blood, the gore, the guts. Jeffrey Combs, fantastic. Barbara Crampton, a gorgeous scream queen. It's just a great movie, and if you haven't seen it, you should really check it out. And I recommend seeing it in the best version possible, because the previous Arrow Video Blu-ray that was released is serviceable and decent, but there's a lot of dust on the print, hair, that kind of thing, and there's a few parts. I was actually watching somebody else's video on YouTube, and it was talking about in detail like some of the things that were wrong with the print. And now that I've seen that, it would be hard to go back, and after seeing it on the big screen in like the best possible version I possibly could, to go back and see it in an inferior way. So I'd recommend picking up the Ignite Films Blu-ray. Maybe drop the $35-$40, catch it on sale, that kind of thing. But it's definitely worth a watch. 9.5 out of 10 for Reanimator. You really can't go wrong with special effects. A few of them don't hold up, so that's why I'm scraping a little bit off the top of that half point. But for the time, fantastic movie. Love it. Let's see. Next film we're going to talk about is Slaughterhouse Killer. This one I saw on, what was it? It was a streaming service. Oh, it was called Cranked Up. It's called Cranked Up, and the only reason I have this service, a lot of you may not have heard of it. I don't think it's hugely popular at the moment, but it's an independent horror streaming service, And I actually went to a horror movie convention about 4 or 5 months ago, and they handed me a QR code on like a little heavy stock paper thing, and we're like, "Hey, check this out. We don't do ads. We'll never do ads. It's 4 or 5, whatever it is, a month, and you get independent horror." And so I came back home, unloaded my stuff and everything. I kind of went with a few of my other items that I got from the horror movie convention, but I was cleaning some things out a few weeks ago, and I saw the little card that they gave me, and so I did the QR code, and I wound up logging into there and checking out everything they had. They have a bunch of really interesting horror movies, a lot of independent stuff, and obviously there's, like we've talked about, there's a lot of schlock on there too, because when you get into super low budget independent horror, you're going to run into people that just don't have enough money to put their vision on the screen, and that's okay. Slaughterhouse Killer kind of falls in the middle of the pack for me. It's not as, I don't want to say bad, but it's not as starved for money as the movie that we're going to talk, or it's not as starved for money as the movies that we're going to talk about at the end of the episodes a lot of times that we're not giving like formal ratings. This one was, you could tell that there was some money put into it, and the acting, surprisingly, it was actually very good acting. Slaughterhouse Killer is about a guy that goes to work at a slaughterhouse, and he meets this friend of his, or he meets this guy that winds up becoming his friend, and he's a big, heavy-set guy, kind of gross. Like, we start at the movie seeing him in his whitey-tighties. It's pretty gnarly. But this new guy comes to work there, and he's getting, like, picked on by some of the other employees at the factory. And I'm going to call him the lead villain actor guy. He decides to, like, help this guy out and help defend him. Well, it turns out that he is also a serial killer, and he sees people a lot of the same way as he sees like the animals that they're slaughtering at the slaughterhouse. He doesn't really think of them as people as much as it is something for him to kill and to bring him enjoyment. I don't know if he ever really verbalizes that, but it's clear that he enjoys what he's doing. And it's an odd turn that it takes, because the friend that comes, or the guy that comes to work there that becomes his friend, like, is on board with this like surprisingly fast, like unrealistically fast, I would say. They wind up killing one of the main bullies that was bullying him originally, and like had put a pig's penis in his mouth. Like they had killed the pig and cut its penis off, and some of the guys like held him down and they stuck the penis in his mouth, just being gross, I guess. Well, the lead villain, the big guy, winds up becoming his friend and helping him get out of the situation he's in with the bullies. And they wind up going to the bully's house, the lead bully, one night and killing him. And I wish that I could remember the main guy's name. I'm just going to say big guy, though, because I can't remember it right offhand. But the big guy basically is like, hey, you've got to finish this. He kind of beats him down into submission, and then he holds him, and he tells the guy, like, hey, you've got to finish this. You've got to be the one to do it. And the new guy is very hesitant, but he winds up killing the guy through an accidental set of circumstances where big guy winds up like pushing him onto the knife while he's holding him down. So it kind of seems like he's not super into killing people right out of the gate, but after that, it's like it goes rapidly into him being super cool with it, and them just going and murdering people throughout the movie. And then to get away with it, they come back to the butcher shop, the slaughterhouse, and they use the equipment there to like chop the people up and grind them up into burger and cut them up all into pieces, and they take them out and they throw them in a river or something. And it's a pretty interesting way for a movie to go, to show how somebody could get away with something like that, I guess. That was pretty cool. The movie reminded me a lot of a movie that came out back in like the early 2000s called Wolf Creek, which I really like. In fact, one of my notes on here that I put down is like it's Wolf Creek Light. I would say that the lead villain isn't as magnetic as the lead actor from Wolf Creek, as far as like wanting to just watch him on screen. But he does a serviceable job, and I think it's good. It's good enough, definitely. And especially for something as low budget as this is, it's pretty astounding that they were able to come up with this much quality to put on the screen for something like this, because I don't get the impression that a whole lot of money was put behind it. The third act gets a little bit wonky, and you could probably guess where it's going to go. Guy winds up wanting to get out of the whole rigmarole of killing people and all that kind of stuff. And big guy doesn't want to let him, crazy stuff ensues, and then the movie ends. Overall, I give it a 6 out of 10. There's some acting hiccups in there, like the guy's girlfriend isn't that great. Blood and gore is okay. Story is okay, but there were a few of the issues that I had that I was talking about where it feels like the new guy was way on board with this way too fast, and it didn't really ring true, I would say. But overall, 6 out of 10. Good enough movie. I liked it. Definitely wasn't upset that I watched it, and I was pretty happy to see it on Cranked Up, this streaming service that I hadn't ever heard of before. Just something that I could jump onto and watch and support independent horror. So Slaughterhouse Killer, 6 out of 10. Next one we're going to talk about, Next one we're going to talk about is Pontypool. So this movie, I used to listen to horror movie podcasts a lot back for like the past 10 or 15 years, and a lot of the ones that I've listened to have come and gone. But one of the movies they talked about that I can remember vividly hearing them like rave about was a movie called Pontypool. And I would hear about it and I'd be like, oh, that sounds really cool. I'll have to check that out one day. But for whatever reason, I just never checked it out. It just always slipped under my radar, always flew past, and I just always had something else to watch. I can remember trying to find the DVD for a while, and Blockbuster had it. Blockbuster had it, but it didn't have any special features, and I like to listen to commentaries and that kind of thing. So I was hesitant to jump on and purchase it for the amount that it was going for, because I want to say it was like $20 for just a super basic DVD. And with it coming from Blockbuster, that it's probably going to be an X rental. So God only knows what the disc itself is going to look like. Well, and then they have a version of it that has some special features, but it was Region B. And I probably have something that would play Region B, but I don't know for sure. And then there's a few other ways that I found to watch it, but oddly enough, I wound up finding it on Shudder. They added it to Shudder not too long ago. And watched it a couple of days ago. Excuse me while I take a sip of my water. Watched it a couple of days ago, and it was a pretty quick watch. I'd probably say like 90 minutes, 100 minutes. But it was so hard to look away from the screen while I was watching it. The lead actor, so the movie is about a zombie apocalypse that starts happening, or a type of zombie apocalypse. You'd have to watch the movie because I really don't want to spoil this one for you, so I'm not going to. But a kind of zombie apocalypse breaks out, and we see it through a really enclosed space at a radio station that this guy works at. The guy that plays the radio DJ is so good. He is so fun to watch. He's such a good actor. Every time that he was on screen and talking, he had a really good radio voice as it was. And so just listening to him talk about all the different things going on and talking to we've got Mike or whatever his name is up in the sunshine helicopter telling us about weather. It was so cool to see that kind of stuff on the screen, and how they talk about it, how his producers handle things. With him getting a little bit off the rails on some of his political rants and that kind of thing. It was fun, and he was a really good actor and really, really easy to listen to, and interesting to see how his story was going to play out with this zombie apocalypse that he's essentially, barricaded in from to an extent. But listening to it through the people calling in and news radios calling in to check on his radio station, and because they know that the outbreak has started outside their doors. It was so good, and the acting for him, fantastic. The acting for the producer was fantastic. The acting for she may have been the audio girl or something like that. She was pretty good. There were no real holes in the acting at all. It was so good. 90 to 100 minutes, which is, the longer we go on, you're going to find out that 90 to 100 minutes is my sweet spot for a movie. I love something that's quick, that hits me quick, that gets through the story, that doesn't just drag on forever and ever. I don't mind slow burns a lot of times, but it's got to really make it worth it for me. And there's too many movies that don't. Well, this one isn't one of them, because it's a slow burn, but a quick watch. And so once everything starts making sense and you kind of see where the plot is going. You have a lot of aha moments, like, oh, that's really cool that they thought of doing it this way. And it was a great movie. It's a great movie. I definitely recommend you watch it. It's on Shudder right now. Today is May 24th. So it's definitely on Shudder right now. You should check it out. Shudder's dirt cheap to get a bunch of great horror movies and a lot of originals and stuff. I sound like a shill. I don't want to sound like a shill for all these different platforms, but it's hard to find horror sometimes. And like I said, I wasn't going to shell out the money for the DVD on a blind buy like this when I hadn't heard anything about it in 10, 15 years. But I'm really glad I watched it. The third act, the only thing I would say is the third act gets pretty off the rails and starts to get into some very hokey territory where it was hard for me to follow along. And it lets the plot go just a little bit too long in the tooth. It's almost like they tell us a little bit too much. But overall, outside of that, I didn't hate the ending or anything. It's not something that I feel like it ruined the whole movie for me. It was still, good. I just feel like it was a little bit long in the tooth. So Pontypool, I'm going to give an 8.5 out of 10. Mostly just removing some points and pieces of points off of it for the kind of jacked up way the ending went. But great movie. Please watch it. Last main feature we're going to talk about is Bring Her Back. That's a brand new movie that I don't think it's even technically hit theaters yet because I saw it at Regal Cinemas. So Regal, if you don't know, has another thing where I sound like a shill, but this is where I saw it at. So I'm just going to tell you because otherwise you'll be like, how does this fucking guy get to see this movie before anybody else? Even though he's, just some dude out in the middle of nowhere talking about movies. It comes out at Regal Cinema on the Mystery Movie Monday, and when I checked my little Regal movie app, it said that it was a Monday Mystery Movie horror edition, and so I was pretty into it. I get a pass, so it was dirt cheap to go see it. I had no idea what I was going to be seeing. Outside of online, some people were talking about that they think it could be this movie and that movie, and one of them said it was possibly going to be Bring Her Back. Bring Her Back is kind of a odd take on a possession movie with, what's the best way to say it? It's an odd take on a possession movie, but the possession isn't really the focus of the movie. It's kind of a byproduct of what's trying to be accomplished in the movie. And I think this is another one that I probably shouldn't ruin for people since most everyone hasn't had a chance to see it yet, and God only knows when I'm going to put this podcast out. So it may be live by the time I get everything on this edited and I'm happy with the way it sounds. But I'm not going to completely ruin the end. All the acting in the movie was pretty good. You had a brother and sister duo leading the movie that something happens to one of their parents. That may even be in the trailer, so I don't think I'm spoiling on that. But they wind up having to go into foster care, and they go stay at this new foster care lady's house. And there's some things that have turned out about things that have happened in her life and why she wants to have foster children. I'm going to leave it there so that way I don't spoil anything out of it, because the twists and turns the movie makes are really, really interesting and really good. It's another one that I would call a slow burn. It's A24, which is a distribution company or maybe a production company that may produce. I don't know. But pretty consistently they've done good with horror movies. They did Hereditary, which this one, when you watch it, you're going to get a lot of the same feelings you got about Hereditary, of like the sense of dread going with the movie. Like I said, acting was all pretty good. Brother and sister were fine. Foster mother was fantastic. Like, I felt really creeped out by her, but also felt really sympathetic towards her when you kind of figure out what's going on with the movie and what she's living through and what she's trying to deal with. Ending was pretty good. It took a long time to get into some of the scarier parts of the movie, but once you get there, you're kind of left with a constant sense of dread. And if you've seen Hereditary, I think you kind of know what I'm talking about, where the movie wasn't super scary up until the little girl. Spoilers for Hereditary, which is now like 7 or 8 years old. But until what happened to the little girl happened to the little girl, and that kind of kicked off the whole horror aspect of the movie and the constant scares and fear and all that kind of stuff. This movie kind of does the same thing, and it's also really similar to I think a movie called Lie to Me is another one that just came out. I can't remember what it was called. Lie to Me, maybe. It's another one that's really similar to this movie. It's the one where they've got the hand that people get possessed by when they shake it, and it's like a party game basically where they try to get possessed. It feels a lot like that, but A24 is pretty consistently good with making, solid horror movies. So I was happy with it, and I was especially happy that it was something that wasn't just a turd that I went and saw on a blind visit to the movie theater. Because the last time I did this, just a little sidetrack, rabbit trail. The last time I did this, it was Sting that had come out at the Mystery Monday movie, and Sting was not great. We may talk about it at some point. I don't know. It depends on how many decades or centuries this podcast goes on, but it wasn't great. And outside of getting to see it for cheap because of the way they released it, I probably wouldn't have ever seen it. So it's a cool way to get to see stuff that you wouldn't normally check out. But with this being A24, bring her back. I would have checked it out anyways, sooner or later. It's getting a lot of the hype things on the internet that you see a lot of times, where they talk about The Exorcist was the scariest movie of all time. I saw one that said this is the scariest movie this decade. It's definitely, absolutely not. Don't let that kind of thing get you hyped up for it, because all that ever leads to for me is just utter disappointment when the movie is not what I thought it was going to be. And I just wound up sad, and I don't want to be sad. I want to be happy. I watch horror movies to be happy, oddly enough. It brings me a lot of joy in my life. And don't go into it thinking that you're going to see the scariest movie that you've ever seen in your entire life, because you're just not. But you are going to see a pretty solid horror thriller, I call it a mindfuck type movie with some creepy imagery, creepy stuff going on, a decent story throughout, good acting. You can't really go wrong. It's a well-made movie, and I'm glad I saw it. I'm going to give that one an 8 out of 10, mostly because it was a really slow burn, almost to a disservice, and I feel like the brother and sister were kind of just okay at certain points in the movie. Brother was a little bit better, but the sister, she's not necessarily the greatest actress, but I don't want to beat up on her acting too much, because she has some kind of a disability, and it ties into the movie where she's blind, and I don't know how to say it. I don't want to sound like I'm being a dick to this kid that came onto a movie and did a really good job, because she did good. But yeah, bring her back. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. And last movie that we're going to talk about is a Blu-ray I picked up at a horror movie convention. Same one I got the card for the horror streaming service I was talking about. It's a movie called Twisted Gables. So I've talked in email to the people that made the movie a little bit. I bought some of their merch because I try to support this kind of stuff whenever I can. I bought 2 other movies at the time. They had a movie called Mother Shucker on Blu-ray, which is about a drunk guy in the middle of a farm that gets killed, and he's just like a drunk piece of shit, but he gets killed, and then he winds up becoming this entity called Mother Shucker that goes around and kills people. And it's just a guy in a corn horror mask and a ghillie suit, but it's pretty funny, and it's fun to watch, and it's fun to use it as a way to support independent horror. And so I really enjoyed watching it with some friends, and I was just hanging out watching something that was not the greatest movie ever made, but certainly not the worst, and definitely had a lot of passion put into it. But the movie that I'm actually talking about is Twisted Gables, and this is their second feature that I'm aware of, and it's the second Blu-ray that they had, and I bought them as a package deal. It took me a while to get to this one for whatever reason, because I watched Mother Shucker and I got into it and enjoyed it, and then Twisted Gables kind of fell off to the side. They actually just made it this year, if I remember correctly. It's a 2025 release, but it's better as far as the filmmaking perspective or the filmmaking side of things. You can tell that they learned a lot from making Mother Shucker, and you could tell that they had figured out a lot of the camera tricks and some of the audio issues that were in the first movie, which for a first movie it was minor stuff anyways. The story is interesting. Some of the acting, like we've talked about with independent horror, you're going to get hits and misses there. Like people do as good as they can with what they have, and this movie is a perfect testament to that. Like, you have all these people that are probably like their friends or the people that they know or people that they could get to come and work on a movie for, next to no money, because it's a no budget independent horror movie. And when you factor all of those things in, and I personally would be willing to grade on a curve for that kind of thing, it's really good. And you could tell that there was like an intact script in place. The dialogue is pretty decent. It's a little bit hit and miss at certain points, but I was pretty happy to watch it. I was surprised that it was as much better than Mother Shucker as it was, because I really enjoyed Mother Shucker, even though, it had some issues. Story-wise, it had some funny parts of the story and some kind of creepy parts. The acting, there's a guy named Carl, and they actually have a YouTube channel where they do podcasts and stuff. And I think the main guy that directed is named Justin. So he directed it. Carl is in almost all of their video podcasts on YouTube. And Carl, I would watch Twisted Gables and Mother Shucker just for Carl, because he's like an early 60s, maybe late 50s guy that's kind of just, he comes across as like a southern kind of farmer type, and he's so fucking funny. Every time that he's on screen, I kind of chuckle, because after seeing how he is on their podcast and stuff, I know how his personality seems to come across, and I feel like it's just fun to watch him on screen. So if you get a chance to check it out, it's called Twisted Gables. I'm not going to give it a rating on a scale of 1 to 10, because it's independent horror. No matter what I said about it, please check it out, because people that make these kinds of things 2 years from now could be making the next Terrifier. So I want as much of it as I can possibly get, even if it's not the greatest thing that's ever been pressed onto a DVD or a Blu-ray. I could give a shit. I just want to get to enjoy it. So anyways, that's going to be the first episode of my horror movie podcast, to be named at some point in the future. But hopefully by the time this comes out, I'm sure that by the time you have something to click on, I'll have a name picked out for it. And then next episode, we'll start calling it by that name. But I really appreciate you guys listening to it, anybody that did. And I enjoy just talking about horror movies and stuff. And there's not a whole lot of people around me that are super into them. So thought maybe I would just get on the internet, talk about stuff, see if people want to jump in and us, start a conversation, hang out, talk about some horror movies, and have some fun. Thank you guys. Take care, okay?